The judge's voice cuts through the courtroom like a blade. The petitioners describe the respondent as unfit to make informed decisions regarding her personal and financial affairs. I hear the words, but they don't feel real. Not until I see my mother's face, calm, practiced, showing just enough concern for the audience. My father sits beside her, pen already in hand, ready to sign whatever document will make this official. They are not angry. They are not conflicted. They are confident. That's what makes my stomach drop. This isn't a mistake or a misunderstanding born from parental worry. This is calculated. This is a plan they've been building for months, maybe longer. The courtroom feels too bright, too formal, too final. I'm 28 years old, sitting in a chair that feels like a witness stand, watching my own parents describe me as incompetent. The lawyer they hired uses words like vulnerable, and impaired judgment, and in need of protection. My hands rest on my lap, fingers interlaced, steadier than I feel. I don't cry. I don't shout. I just listen and absorb every word, every glance, every carefully chosen phrase that's designed to erase my credibility. My attorney leans over and whispers something about procedure, about how we'll have time to respond, but I'm not listening anymore. I'm watching my parents. My mother adjusts her necklace, a nervous habit she's had my whole life, but today it looks like Polish. My father straightens his tie. They look like concerned citizens doing their civic duty. No one in this room would guess they rehearsed this. But I know they did. I know because 3 weeks ago, I overheard my mother on the phone with their lawyer, practicing her testimony. I know because I found the draft petition in my father's study 2 months before they filed it. I know because I've spent the last year watching them build a narrative around me, brick by careful brick. They never expected me to notice. They assumed I'd react emotionally, make scenes, prove their case for them. Instead, I stayed quiet. I took notes. I waited. The judge asks my father to confirm his signature. He nods solemnly and signs the document without hesitation. My mother does the same. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't concern spiraling into desperate action. This was strategy. My parents signed me away as unfit. The court record they ignored ended everything. My name is Elena Brooks. I'm 28 years old, and according to my parents, I can't be trusted to manage my own life. I'm not addicted to anything. I'm not mentally ill. I'm not reckless with money or dangerous to myself. I'm just inconvenient. That's what this really is. I've always been the difficult one in my family, not because I caused problems, but because I asked questions. I challenged decisions. I refused to follow the script they'd written for my life. When I chose a career they didn't approve of, I was being stubborn. When I moved into my own apartment instead of staying home, I was being impulsive. When I started asking about family finances and inheritance plans, I became a problem that needed solving. My younger brother never had these issues. He followed the path they laid out, the right college, the right job, the right marriage. He never questioned why our grandmother's estate was divided the way it was, or why certain accounts had been moved, or why I was suddenly being excluded from family financial discussions. He's their favorite. Always has been. And I'm the loose end they need to tie up. Growing up, I learned early that approval in our house was conditional. My brother could bring home average grades and get praised for trying. I could bring home perfect grades and get asked why I hadn't done the extra credit. He could change his major twice, and it was called finding himself. When I changed mine once, it was proof I lacked direction. The difference wasn't about our choices. It was about control. My brother accepted their guidance without question. I didn't. That made me the problem child, even though I was never actually in trouble. I didn't drink in high school. I didn't sneak out. I didn't fail classes or crash cars, or do any of the things parents actually worry about. I just had opinions. And those opinions, over time, became evidence of something deeper in their minds, evidence that I wasn't stable, wasn't trustworthy, wasn't capable of making good decisions. By the time I reached my 20s, the narrative was set. My brother was responsible. I was concerning. And now, sitting in this courtroom, I understand how much power that narrative holds when it's repeated often enough, confidently enough, to the right people. The inheritance question surfaces during a family dinner 8 months before the courtroom. My grandmother passed away 2 years ago, leaving behind a substantial estate. The will named my brother and me as equal beneficiaries, with my parents as executors until we each turned 30. I am 2 years away from that age. My brother turned 30 last year, and received his portion immediately. But when I ask about the timeline for mine, my father changes the subject. When I bring it up again a week later, my mother suggests I'm being greedy. That word, greedy, becomes a weapon they use whenever I mention money. It's not greed to ask about your own inheritance. It's not greed to want transparency about accounts with your name on them. But in their version of events, my questions become proof of instability. Proof that I'm too focused on money. Proof that I need guidance. I start noticing other things after that dinner. Documents I'm no longer copied on. Meetings with the estate attorney that I'm not invited to. Conversations that stop when I enter the room. The money isn't just sitting there waiting for me to turn 30. Something's changed. And they don't want me to know what. My parents start helping me in small ways that feel wrong. My mother offers to organize my apartment, saying she wants to help me declutter. My father suggests he review my budget to make sure I'm being smart with money. They frame everything as concern, as love, as wanting to see me succeed. But there's a pattern to their help. They want access. They want to see my bank statements, my lease agreement, my medical records. They want copies of everything, justified with phrases like just in case something happens, or we're your emergency contacts. I agree to some of it at first because refusing feels paranoid. But I start keeping certain documents separate. I open a new bank account they don't know about. I move my important papers to a safety deposit box. These small acts of protection turn out to be crucial later. At the time, I just feel uneasy. Looking back, I realize they were building a file. Everything they asked for, every document they collected, was going to be used to show I needed their intervention. That I couldn't manage on my own. That I was overwhelmed, disorganized, in over my head. 3 months before the hearing, I find a document in my father's office. I'm not snooping, not intentionally. I'm looking for a book he borrowed, and I see a folder on his desk labeled Elena, Concerns. Inside are printouts of my social media posts, receipts from purchases I've made, even a letter from my landlord about a late rent payment from 6 months ago. That payment wasn't late because I couldn't afford it. It was late because I was out of town and forgot to set up autopay. I fixed it the next day. But in this folder, it's framed as evidence of financial irresponsibility. There are notes in my mother's handwriting, erratic spending patterns, isolation from family, resistant to guidance. None of it is true, but it's documented. It's official looking. It's designed to build a case. I take photos of everything with my phone, careful not to disturb the order of the pages. Then I leave the folder exactly as I found it. That night, I start my own file. I pull bank statements showing consistent payments. I screenshot texts proving I haven't isolated from anyone. I gather evidence that my life is stable, boring even. But I don't confront them. Not yet. The concern performance begins in earnest after I find the folder. My parents start mentioning therapy, suggesting I might benefit from talking to someone. They recommend a specific doctor, someone they know through a family friend. I agree to one session just to appease them. The appointment feels off from the start. The therapist asks leading questions about my relationship with my parents, about whether I feel overwhelmed by adult responsibilities, about whether I've considered letting them help more with major decisions. I answer honestly but carefully. I'm not overwhelmed. I'm independent. I'm managing fine. But I can tell my answers aren't what she expects. 2 weeks later, my mother mentions casually that the therapist expressed concern about me. She says it gently, like she's delivering bad news she wishes weren't true. I request a copy of the therapist's notes through the patient portal. What I read doesn't match what happened in that room. The notes describe me as defensive, resistant to accepting help, showing poor insight into my limitations. These aren't observations. They are interpretations designed to support a specific conclusion. I file a formal complaint with the licensing board and switch to a different therapist entirely, one I find on my own. That therapist's notes tell a completely different story. I discover the forged signature by accident. I'm applying for a new credit card and get denied. The reason? I already have a joint account with a family member that's affecting my credit utilization. I never opened a joint account with anyone. I call the bank and request documentation. What they send me includes an application with my signature on it, dated 8 months ago. But I was out of the country that week. I have passport stamps proving it. Someone signed my name. The account is linked to my father. I report it immediately to the bank and file a police report. The bank closes the account and launches an investigation. But when I confront my parents, they act confused. My father says I must have signed it and forgotten. My mother suggests I'm being paranoid, that this is exactly the kind of confusion they've been worried about. They turn my discovery of their fraud into more evidence that I'm unstable. I don't argue. I just document everything, the police report, the bank investigation findings, the passport stamps. This wasn't confusion. This was identity theft. And it was legal enough to fly under the radar until I checked. I make a choice that surprises everyone, including myself. I stop fighting. When my parents suggest I move back home temporarily, I consider it. When they want to attend my doctor appointments, I let them. When they ask to review my finances again, I provide the information from the accounts they already know about. I become compliant. Cooperative. Agreeable. They think they are winning. They think I've accepted their help and realized they were right all along. But compliance is camouflage. While they relax into their narrative, I'm quietly building my own. I record conversations where they contradict themselves. I keep copies of every email. I note every time they make a decision for me without asking, then frame it as concern. I'm not being vindictive. I'm being thorough. Every interaction is potential evidence. Every suggestion they make is a piece of the puzzle. They wanted to document my instability. Instead, they are documenting their control. And they don't even realize it. My attorney, the one I hired privately, not the one they wanted me to use, tells me this approach is smart. Let them think you're cooperating while we prepare the real defense. So that's what I do. I comply publicly. I prepare privately. Requesting my own records turns out to be simpler than I expected. As the subject of the guardianship petition, I have legal right to access all documentation filed with the court. I submit the request through my attorney, phrasing it as routine review. The court sends everything: psychological evaluations, financial assessments, witness statements, medical records they've submitted. It's a thick file. I spend 3 days reading every page. Some of it is accurate, but misleading, facts presented without context to suggest instability. Some of it is outright false, claims about behaviors I've never exhibited, diagnoses I've never received. But buried in the middle is something they clearly didn't expect me to notice. A psychiatric evaluation from 2 years ago, conducted during a routine physical when I mentioned feeling stressed about work. The doctor noted that I showed no signs of impairment, no cognitive deficits, no mood disorders requiring intervention. I was functioning normally in all domains. That evaluation contradicts everything my parents' case is built on. And it's dated after most of the concerning behaviors they claim began. If I was competent 2 years ago, and nothing major has changed since then, what's their justification now? I make copies of everything. I highlight the discrepancies. I build a timeline showing when each evaluation happened, and what it actually said versus how they are presenting it. The contradiction becomes impossible to ignore once I lay it out visually. On the left side of my timeline, I list every claim my parents have made: financially irresponsible, poor judgment, unable to maintain stable housing, resistant to treatment. On the right side, I list the documented facts: consistent rent payments, stable employment, regular medical care, clear evaluations from independent providers. The two columns don't match at all. But there's something more specific. The psychological evaluation they are using to prove I need a guardian was conducted by the therapist they recommended, the one who asked leading questions. That evaluation describes concerning patterns of behavior. But the evaluation from 2 years ago, conducted by an independent psychiatrist I saw once for stress management, describes someone functioning well in all areas of life. Both evaluations are in the court file. But only one is being referenced in the petition. The other was submitted as part of my complete medical history, but never mentioned in their arguments. It's not that they hid it. It's that they ignored it. And they assumed no one would read closely enough to notice that these two professional opinions directly contradict each other. That assumption was a mistake. The ignored record sits in plain sight, buried under amendments and supplemental filings. It's a court document from 18 months ago, a routine hearing about the estate. During that hearing, the judge asked if all beneficiaries were competent to receive their inheritance at the designated age. My parents' attorney answered yes, without qualification. That statement is recorded in the official transcript. I request a certified copy through the court clerk. When it arrives, I read the exchange 3 times to make sure I understand it correctly. Judge, and both children are capable of managing their inheritance responsibly at the designated ages. Parents' attorney, yes, Your Honor. Both beneficiaries meet all competency requirements. Judge, and there are no concerns about either party's ability to make financial decisions. Parents' attorney, none whatsoever. This was 18 months ago. Now they are claiming I've been unfit for years. The timeline doesn't work. Either I was competent 18 months ago, and something catastrophic happened since then, or they lied to the judge then, and they are lying now. There's no third option. I bring this transcript to my attorney. She reads it, looks up at me, and smiles. This is what we've been looking for. This changes everything. My parents push harder as the hearing date approaches. They file additional documentation, statements from family friends describing me as withdrawn, letters from distant relatives expressing concern, even a statement from my brother saying he's worried about me. They are building momentum, adding weight to their case. They want the judge to see a pattern so overwhelming that there's no question I need their intervention. Their confidence grows with each filing. My mother starts talking about what happens after, about how this will be better for everyone, about how I'll thank them someday when I understand they were protecting me. My father mentions plans to consolidate my finances under his management, to simplify everything. They are already living in the future where they've won. That confidence makes them careless. They stop checking their story for consistency. They submit a statement claiming I haven't held stable employment for 2 years, but my W-2s show continuous employment with the same company. They claim I've been evicted multiple times, but my landlord provides a letter confirming I've never missed a payment or violated my lease. They are so focused on quantity of evidence that they forget about quality. Every exaggeration, every small lie, is a crack in their credibility. And I'm documenting every single one. Building the timeline takes weeks. I create a spreadsheet with 4 columns: date, their claim, actual documentation, and source. Every statement they've made gets its own row. Every piece of evidence I have gets linked. The pattern that emerges is damning. They claim I've been unstable for 3 years. But 3 years ago, I received a promotion at work. They claim I've isolated from family. But I have text messages showing I attended every holiday dinner, every birthday party, every family event until 8 months ago, when they started this process. They claim I'm irresponsible with money. But my credit score is excellent, my savings account is healthy, and I've never had a bill sent to collections. The timeline doesn't just contradict their claims. It shows something more troubling. Every concerning behavior they describe started happening in their telling around the same time they began planning this guardianship. Before that, according to their own earlier statements in other contexts, I was fine. It's not that I deteriorated. It's that their story changed. And stories change when people need them to. Facts don't. I have facts. They have a story. And I'm about to show the court the difference. I meet with a neutral attorney, someone not involved in the case, to review everything I've compiled. She specializes in guardianship law and has no connection to my family. I want an objective opinion about whether I am seeing clearly or if I'm too close to this to be rational. She spends 2 hours going through my timeline, the court transcripts, the contradicting evaluations, the evidence of forgery. When she finishes, she sets down her pen and looks at me with something like respect. This is one of the strongest defense cases I've seen in 20 years, she tells me. Your parents' petition should never have gotten this far. The court record alone is decisive. She explains that the statement from 18 months ago, where their attorney confirmed my competency, creates a legal standard they now have to disprove. They need to show a significant change in circumstances. Instead, they've submitted evidence showing I'm exactly the same as I was then. Stable employment. Stable housing. No criminal record. No hospitalizations. No dramatic incidents. Their case is built on perception and interpretation, not on factual change. The judge is going to ask why this wasn't raised before, she says. And they won't have a good answer. I ask what happens if they lose. She smiles. Then you walk away with your autonomy intact and they lose credibility with the court. File this wherever they need it. The court reopens the case for a full review hearing. My attorney files our response, including the transcript from 18 months ago, the contradicting evaluations, and documentation of my financial stability. We request that all claims be substantiated with objective evidence, not interpretations or opinions. The judge sets a date 4 weeks out. In the meantime, my parents' attorney tries to settle. They offer to withdraw the petition if I agree to certain conditions, letting them manage my inheritance until I'm 35, giving them power of attorney over medical decisions, checking in weekly with a therapist of their choosing. My attorney asks if I want to negotiate. I say no. We are past negotiation. They started this process to control my life and my inheritance. They wanted to make this legal. Now we'll let the law decide. The settlement offer tells me they are worried. If they were confident in their case, they wouldn't be trying to avoid the hearing. My attorney agrees. They know something's wrong with their evidence, she says. They just don't know that you know about the transcript. That transcript is our opening move. Everything else, the timeline, the contradicting evaluations, the proof of forgery, is backup. We are not going into this hearing hoping to create reasonable doubt. We are going in to dismantle their case entirely. The hearing starts exactly as I expected. My parents' attorney presents their narrative with confident sympathy. He describes a young woman who's struggled with adult responsibilities, who's isolated herself from family support, who needs intervention before she makes decisions that harm her future. He calls character witnesses who describe me as distant, difficult, resistant to help. He submits the evaluation from the therapist they recommended, emphasizing phrases like poor insight and defensive presentation. My mother testifies with perfect composure. She talks about how hard this decision was, how much they love me, how they just want to protect me. She cries at exactly the right moment. My father testifies about financial concerns, about patterns he's observed, about his duty as a parent to step in when a child can't see clearly. They are good. They are convincing. If I were sitting in that courtroom without context, I might believe them. The judge listens carefully, takes notes, asks clarifying questions. My parents' attorney rests his case, clearly satisfied. They think they've won. That's when my attorney stands up. Your Honor, before we present our case, I'd like to enter one document into evidence. A transcript from a hearing in this same court, 18 months ago, regarding the Brooks family estate. The courtroom goes completely quiet as the court clerk distributes copies of the transcript. The judge reads it slowly. I watch my parents' faces as they realize what document we are submitting. My father's expression doesn't change, but his jaw tightens. My mother glances at their attorney, who's flipping through the pages with growing confusion. He clearly wasn't aware this transcript existed. Or he was aware and didn't think it mattered. That was his mistake. The judge finishes reading and looks up. The atmosphere in the room has shifted. Counselor, she says to my parents' attorney, this transcript indicates that 18 months ago, you represented to this court that both beneficiaries, including Ms. Brooks, were fully competent to receive and manage their inheritance. Is that correct? He hesitates. Yes, Your Honor. That was the understanding at that time. And now you're representing that Ms. Brooks has been unfit to make decisions for approximately 3 years. That her judgment has been impaired for years. New information has come to light since that hearing, he says carefully. What new information? The judge asks. What significant change in circumstances occurred between that hearing and this petition? The silence stretches. There is no good answer. Either they lied then, or they are lying now. My attorney doesn't wait for them to recover. She presents the timeline I built, highlighting the discrepancy. She submits my employment records, my rental history, my bank statements. She enters the independent psychiatric evaluation from 2 years ago that contradicts their narrative. She presents documentation of the forged signature and the police report I filed. Every piece of evidence is time-stamped, sourced, verified. Not interpretations. Not opinions. Facts. The judge asks my parents' attorney if he'd like to address the transcript contradiction. He tries. He talks about patterns that weren't obvious before, about concerns that developed gradually, about behaviors that seemed minor at the time but accumulated into something concerning. But he can't explain why, if these patterns were so concerning, they told the court 18 months ago that I was fully competent. He can't explain why every objective professional evaluation shows normal functioning. He can't explain the forged signature, or why they collected documents about me in a folder labeled Concerns months before exhibiting any actual concerning behavior. His explanations sound weak because they are weak. The story doesn't hold together under scrutiny. And scrutiny is what my silence bought me, time to find the places where their story fell apart. The judge asks my parents if they have anything to add. They have nothing that helps. The collapse happens slowly, then all at once. Each question the judge asks reveals another inconsistency. Why wasn't the independent evaluation mentioned in your petition? Why does your financial concern claim she's irresponsible when her credit report shows the opposite? Why does your witness statement describe isolation when her phone records show regular contact with friends? My parents' attorney tries to reframe, to redirect, to emphasize the overall pattern. But there is no overall pattern. There's just a collection of misrepresented facts and exaggerated concerns. The judge asks my father directly about the forged signature on the bank account. He claims it was a misunderstanding, that he thought he had my permission. But when pressed, he can't explain why he didn't just ask me directly if he genuinely believed I'd agree. He can't explain why he'd signed someone else's name without their knowledge, permission or not. That moment, watching my father stumble through an explanation that makes no sense, is when I see their credibility shatter completely. The judge's expression changes. She's no longer listening with sympathy. She's listening with skepticism. And once a judge starts doubting your credibility, every piece of your case becomes questionable. Everything they said, every evaluation they submitted, every witness statement, now looks like part of a constructed narrative rather than genuine concern. Their whole case was built on trust. And that trust is gone. The judge takes a brief recess to review all the evidence. When she returns, her decision is clear and direct. The petition for guardianship is denied. The evidence presented by the petitioners relies heavily on subjective interpretation and fails to demonstrate the kind of significant impairment required by law. Moreover, the contradiction between statements made to this court 18 months ago and claims made today raises serious questions about credibility. She continues. Ms. Brooks has demonstrated, through objective documentation, that she is managing her affairs competently. She maintains stable employment, stable housing, and appropriate financial practices. The psychiatric evaluation from an independent provider shows no cognitive impairment or mental health crisis requiring intervention. Then the final blow. Furthermore, the court notes with concern the evidence of forged signatures and unauthorized account access. These actions undermine the petitioner's claim that their intervention is motivated solely by Ms. Brooks' best interests. She denies the petition completely. No conditions. No compromises. Full denial. Then she goes further. She orders my parents to have no involvement in my financial affairs, including the inheritance, which will be released to me immediately upon my 30th birthday, as originally stipulated in the will. Their authority as executors is revoked. A neutral third party will manage the estate until then. They don't just lose the case. They lose control entirely. The formal restoration happens quickly after that. Within 2 weeks, I receive confirmation that all guardianship attempts have been dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can't be refiled without substantial new evidence. My medical records are sealed from their access. The bank account they opened in my name is permanently closed, and the fraud investigation proceeds independently of my family's involvement. I meet with the new estate executor, a professional attorney with no connection to my parents, who confirms that my inheritance will be released on schedule without any conditions or oversight beyond standard legal requirements. Every system they tried to use against me, medical, legal, financial, now protects me instead. The irony isn't lost on me. They wanted to prove I couldn't manage my own life, and in doing so, they lost the authority to manage any part of it. I receive a letter from my brother, apologizing for his statement. He claims he didn't understand what they were really doing, that he thought they were genuinely concerned. I don't respond. His ignorance, willing or otherwise, doesn't undo his participation. My autonomy is restored formally, legally, completely. And I walk out of that courthouse knowing something I didn't know before. I'm stronger than they ever gave me credit for. Not because I fought loudly, but because I fought smart. I don't go to their house. I don't call to gloat or explain or demand apologies. I simply stop responding. They text asking if we can talk. I don't reply. They send emails saying they were only trying to help. I don't read them. My mother calls twice a day for a week. I block the number. What they wanted from me, control, compliance, access, I'm not giving them anymore. Not out of spite, but out of simple boundary enforcement. They proved what they were willing to do to maintain power over my life. I proved I could stop them without becoming what they claimed I was. That's the victory. Not revenge. Just the quiet, permanent removal of their influence. 6 months later, I turn 30. The inheritance transfers to my account exactly as my grandmother intended. No conditions. No oversight. No strings attached. I use some of it to pay off my attorney. I donate a portion to legal aid organizations helping people fight unjust guardianship cases. The rest I invest carefully, managed by a financial advisor I chose myself. I'm building the life they said I couldn't handle. I'm thriving in the independence they claimed would destroy me. And the record, the one they ignored, sits in a courthouse file forever, proof that sometimes the most devastating response to being called unfit is simply being undeniably competent. You don't have to scream to prove you're capable. Sometimes the truth is loud enough on its own.